Hello. Pahalgam is a town in Jammu and Kashmir in India. It's at an altitude of over 7,000 feet, which means it's usually very temperate in the summer, not like we think of as India. And it's also freezing in the winter, which makes it a great place to get away from the summer heat during the summertime and to indulge in winter sports in the winter. It's got everything. Just look at these pictures. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now, Pahalgam is in Kashmir, and India and Pakistan have a bit of a difference of opinion about who actually has rights to Kashmir. Although Pahalgam is at some distance from the border and is usually fairly safe, a few days ago a group of Hamas-type terrorists intruded and, YouTube speak, removed at least 26 people. It might be more, that was the last count. There's 17 injured as well, and I don't know how many of those will make it the rest of the week. Most of them, of course, were tourists, because this is really a tourist place. One of them was a pair who'd been married only a couple of days. This was their honeymoon. And now, the wife, so far as I know, is a widow. The culprits were an offshoot group of a bunch of Salafi jihadists called the Army of the Righteous, who seem to think it's perfectly righteous. YouTube speak again. Perfectly righteous to point at someone, demand he drop his trousers so they could see if he was circumcised in the Muslim way, and then if he is not, to do something drastic to the rest of his short life. Yeah, that's righteous, isn't it? And I'm granniopteryx. I'm on x.com, YouTube, Rumble and Minds. I'm also on Gab and BitChute, which are accessible in the UK only if you're using a VPN that pretends you're in another country. Hey, this is the land of free speech, folks. So, here are some slightly enraged Hindus, but what I want to know is, where are the outrage hordes of pro-righteous army demonstrators out on the streets of London calling India a bunch of, well, perhaps brown colonists stealing Kashmir from the downtrodden Pakistanis? Where are the posters saying, F India? Where are the drums and the chants? Where are the crowds of gays for a Muslim Kashmir shouting at Hindus going into worship at their temples in North London? Well, I'm not in North London, but somehow I rather think that isn't happening, that there's nothing of the sort going on, because if it isn't Israel, the media are not interested. As a matter of fact, they're hardly interested at all. I've been having a lot of trouble finding out anything about this awful massacre of innocents, which is very similar to what happened to those kids at the Nova Dance Festival. Just some people taking time out to enjoy some fun in pleasant surroundings. But that doesn't fit with the jihadist worldview, does it? If you haven't heard what happened, what India did after this attack, well, there were some soldiers, but there was more diplomatic stuff. India completely stopped talks with Pakistan on the Indus River project, which supplies water to Pakistan. I might remind you, Israel has been supplying water to Gaza all the time their war has been going on. And India has also demanded that every Pakistani resident with a visa in India has 48 hours to leave the country. What would the world say if Israel decided to boot out every Arab in Israel after the October the 7th enormity? The UN would have been talking about little else, I dare say. Anyway, that's a bit of a side issue. What I wanted to point out is that as people like Douglas Murray keep reminding us, it starts with the Jews, but it never stops there. First, it happened in Israel. Now it's happening in India, or at least in Indian-controlled Kashmir. And we are not immune either. Do you know how close France came to the same fate? Oh, I'm sure you don't, because it's hardly been mentioned. But let's have a look at this. France's fatal delusion inside the Islamic State cell that plotted to annihilate a French village. A Syrian by the name of Mohammed Darwish and some pals had several meetings in a halal butcher's shop in the town of Brest in France to discuss their plan to go into a French village. I don't know whether it was a specific one or there was some random element to this, but they were going to go into a French village at night to massacre everybody in the village, just like Hamas did to the villages in the south of Israel. And let's see, in a trial that should have shaken France to its core, 6 men stood before a Paris court for orchestrating one of the most barbaric Islamic terror plots ever uncovered on French soil. Their plan was to wipe out an entire French village off the map in a single night. This was not merely a radicalisation case, as the government's favourite euphemism would suggest. It was not even a criminal conspiracy in the conventional sense. What emerged in testimony, wiretaps and investigations was a chilling revelation, a military operation organised by an Islamic State fighter masquerading as a refugee, allowed to live and plot jihad in France under the protection of its broken immigration system and politically paralysed security apparatus. I have a comment down here somewhere. Here we are. Let us be clear, this was not a criminal plot, it was a military operation orchestrated by enemy combatants exploiting France's suicidal immigration and security policies. Now, I don't know anything about Rare Foundation USA. They may be the worst people on the planet, but this is nothing more nor less than the truth in this case. And it happened, now it's starting, it's not just a single suicide bomber. These people were plotting this, by the way, I think in 2020. So this is ongoing. What happened with Hamas in Israel is part of a greater whole. This was done in 2020, this idea, not of just a couple of revolutionaries going in and shooting, but a military operation. And what happened in Kashmir was a military operation. And what happened in Israel was a military operation. Hamas were divided into battalions. There was a command structure. This is a military philosophy now. And I don't think this is getting much attention, and certainly what's going on in Kashmir is getting very little attention from, I've seen a bit on the BBC, not much otherwise. It's like there's a complete block on the media reminding us that we are at the start of some sort of an asymmetric war. What was going on in places like Rotherham and now it turns out Bradford and Oldham and Oxford, for all I know Cambridge as well, and Bristol and places like that, that was also war. That was what you might call rape jihad. There is a reluctance to admit that. But until we do admit it, we can't do anything about it. And I'm sure the governments are doing stuff in secret, but that's not enough. It has to be out in the open. Remember what somebody said, when they give you their intentions, when they tell you their intentions, believe them. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.